So it is now 6:15. We'll start over, and we'll turn the first part of this off. I'll turn the first part of this off, and it'll seem real fancy. So it is 6:15, 6:16 due to some technical difficulties. I'm starting again. This meeting of the Danville School District Board of Directors. We're going to introduce ourselves around the room because we have people that are remote. My name is Clayton Cargill. I'm the chair of the board. To my right, I have
Eric Hewitt, board member.
I have next to him
Molly Gleason Clark.
I have also in the room.
Tim Sanborn, board member.
I've got Dave Toll, board member online. He may not be able to use his microphone. Dave, can you hear us? He can't, but he's here listening. I have also our current superintendent.
Earth, hopefully.
There you go.
Matt Foster.
Our two building principals are on both remote. Sarah, can you say hello?
Sarah Welch, elementary principal.
And Natalie, please.
Natalie Conway, secondary principal.
All right, in a minute, we're going to get to our guests. Our guests are the town meeting committee. I'll have them introduce themselves then. Before we do that, the first thing I need to do, are there any additions or changes to the agenda that you are aware of? I have the one that I sent you an email about earlier. We were going to potentially discuss new hires. We have no hires to discuss and need to take that off the agenda. In the principal's report, you'll hear where we stand on that. So if I can get a motion to remove from the agenda the action item approval of new hires.
So moved.
From Tim, I have one from Tim, a motion. I have a second from Molly to remove that from the agenda. All in favor of removing approval of new hires from the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries. Approval of new hires is stricken. And that's going to put us back up to number 3 on our agenda. And number 3 on our agenda is the town meeting committee presentation. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. First, I'm going to have each member of the committee introduce themselves. And first off, I'm Clayton. I'm on this committee as well. And I'll turn it over to next Glenn.
Glenn Heron, I'll be presenting. Tom Zabrowski.
Allison Escutcheon.
That's you, me. Eric Hutchins.
Alice Kitchell. Allison Love.
That's everybody on the committee. And there we go. So I'm going to turn this meeting over to Glenn for the presentation. And I'm going to hopefully be able to share the screen for everybody else. I'm going to try to do that now. So that works. Give me a second. Let me pull it up before I share. I have it up. 1 second.
Is anybody present on Zoom or?
No, just Rob's in the room. Oh, Rob's the only member of the book in the room. Nobody else on Zoom. So I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to share Chrome. Okay. And that should pop up there. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yes.
And this is the final draft that I got on June 20, last date, June 28th.
Yes.
Glenn, please.
Okay. So you've all had this. So and hopefully you've had a chance to at least skim it. So I'm not going to spend 2 minutes on it. But my intent, unless you want me to go into more detail, is to basically just hit the high points. And there will be some details that are on the slides that I won't necessarily address unless other people want to raise them. And then there's a ton of detail that we can go into that's in the rest of the report, which I think you also got. It has all of our past analysis and the survey.
Yeah, the final report got distributed in the packet to the board, and they may have some questions. Eric wasn't on the board at any point during the initial assignment or the initial, the first proposal, so he may have a lot of questions, and we'll hold them to the end.
Absolutely. So, okay. So this is the town meeting committee's outbrief to the school board. We still owe the select board one in a couple of weeks, but this is we'll talk about it at the end. But this is anticipated to be our last committee briefing to you. So this is the time to talk about this. Our goal was to identify options for enhancing local participatory democracy in traditional town meeting, as on the cover. So on the purpose and agenda. So what we want to do is brief you on the results of the survey, talk about the recommendations that we have, regardless of format, go through the format recommendations that we have, and talk about a tentative timeline for you leading up to next town meeting and future town meetings. Our mission is in tiny print at the top corner, which again, we think we've done. And the agenda is there, and I will get right into it. So on slide 3. So for the survey results, by the numbers, we had over 200 people fill out the survey, which is pretty good. Very evenly split between retired and employed, almost entirely Danville voters. It was intended for Danville residents, and so presumably a couple people who filled it out are not registered voters. Like I asked my daughter too, she's I don't know what she put in. And then you can see some of the other information there on who filled it in. Observations of interest. One of the key points is that a lot of the answers to the questions, much as we struggled with as a committee, kind of depended on the questions you asked. So a slight majority of people were not in favor of replacing town meeting with Australian ballot in general. But when you ask them, well, would you rather have Australian ballot over floor vote for voting for officials, for budgets, for other things? Then in that case, majorities did say they wanted Australian ballot. So this is kind of why we formed the committee, is because everyone's kind of struggling with those same issues. And I found it interesting to see that in the survey as well. And our main takeaway here, and which the survey result seemed to support, was that respondents really favor the floor vote for some things, Australian ballots for others, and they really like the hybrid format where you get some of both. Work was the main reason why people said they couldn't attend, and probably a no-brainer, but the survey did support it. Presumably the people who attended the floor meeting and filled out paper ballots were more in favor of floor meeting than the people who filled it out online and were not necessarily. Yeah. For the next slide, key facts and assumptions. One of the biggest ones is that one of the concerns with town meeting is that there's not enough people participating. We assumed, and this is borne out, that the most you're ever going to get, ever, is about 40% of participation for town issues. And that's with the, like in 2022, when it was Australian ballot only, and we mailed out ballots to everyone. So all you had to do was fill out the ballot and send it back in. And that got about a 39% turnout. So short of that, last year, 2024, we had what was actually a pretty good meeting where we had 17% come attend the floor meeting and 27% of people fill out the Australian ballots. And that's probably pretty normal, maybe even a little high. So by no means are we getting a majority of people participating in town meeting right now. The committee felt that the floor meeting serves a public good beyond voting. So beyond just voting on issues and getting answers for things, bringing people together is a value of town meeting, and particularly the floor meeting part of it. We thought that as the survey supported, having a hybrid meeting where you have a floor meeting and the Australian ballot is probably a good way to engage people where you can get them where they're at. The people who want to come to floor meeting, come to the floor meeting, and people who just want to vote can vote. But there's differences in what that means for what results is a good thing. And we looked at, given those, given the tension between those two things, we looked at the New Hampshire system, which is called SB2, where people attend a floor meeting a month or two before they have an Australian ballot. And you would think that would give you the best of both worlds, because people can go to the floor meeting and talk about it. And then later on, everyone can vote on the things that were set in the floor meeting. And that's an option that we look at. Go on to the next slide. So here's where we get into the meat of the brief, the recommendations. I'm going to talk about general, the date, time, and then go through the formats. For the next slide, so for general, no matter what, our recommendations are that we should keep some form of floor meeting. I don't think that's necessarily where all the committee members came into this thinking, but as we went through it and we talked about what was good and what was bad and what we could do and what we couldn't, it really seemed like we should keep a floor meeting of some kind. If you lose the floor meeting, then you lose a lot of participation that we're trying to encourage. And there's some suggestions there for things that would help people feel more comfortable in the meetings. We thought that you should always try and always warn something that's interesting to talk about. So like for the school board, You don't have to have decisions on things, but you can warn advisory questions, like you could just talk about, you know, school construction. What do people think about school? You don't have to, again, that's a can of worms that you may not want to address every time, but you can, there's interesting things you can talk about, you know, what does the town want to see for an after school program? What do you think about, you know, whatever other issues you have that you don't need or necessarily want firm guidance from the public, but you would like to talk to them and just get a sense for where the residents stand. And town meeting is a great floor meeting or a great chance to talk about those kind of things. We thought that the town, and specifically in this case, we're suggesting that the school board should appoint every year a town meeting coordinator or a committee of folks who would support the select board, sorry, yes, would support the town meeting for the year. And this group just so happened to kind of voluntarily take that on this last year, and it had pretty good results. We felt like things went pretty smoothly. We advertised the town meeting beyond just the public warning. You know, we put out things on Front Porch Forums and stuff, and we seem to have gotten a better turnout. And we also did things like this right here. We offered a welcome and town meeting orientation for people who are new to town meeting or didn't know that, you know, how to put. And that we had seven people attended that. So we think that's a good idea to continue. The way we're recommending we set that up is, again, the select board would appoint either a coordinator or a committee, and then they would check in with you guys to read the school board to see what guidance you had or what issues you had. Fourth, involving young people. We really think that's, you know, one, that gives us, you know, bodies to like help with seating and mics and things like that. And it also gets them involved so that hopefully they are also pushing people to join town meeting when they get older and to kind of continue the tradition. And the last general recommendation, just ensure that the floor meeting has the same accessibility standards as ballot. We want to make sure that if somebody wants to attend floor meeting, there's space for wheelchairs, there's space for service animals, things like that. People who there's no excuse for people not to come to a floor meeting because because of accessibility. I would just highlight the new state law allows information hearings to happen up to 30 days before, so it's no longer I think it's 10 days. And a lot of people go on vacation because the schools typically have vacation before town meeting. So it might be good to have an informational meeting like 2 weeks before. I don't know how that fits in all the schedules, but that's just a new option.
It gives more leeway than just having them on vacation.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have all the stuff done, there's a possibility that you could say this is where we're headed, this is where we're leaning, even if we don't have all of our numbers in, as we did this year, or we don't know the correct answer. So we'll have to be warned. So it's our warning will already be out. So it just opens that up to be more accessible. We probably can't move one of them because there's no one from the night before we'll be for sure.
We'll talk about that later. So those are the general. No matter what, those are the things that the committee thinks we should do. Okay, next. So for the daytime, we looked at a bunch of different days and times, and we figured that Tuesday during the day really gets best. If you look at evenings, Saturday is just a terrible evening to hold a meeting because it's Saturday night. And evenings in general are bad for people who are older and don't want to come out at night. And honestly, while it allows for working people to come, and so that's good. A lot of working people may decide they've already worked a full day and want to go sit and if you look at the days, Tuesday at least is it is a paid day off for some people, like state employees. It is by state law, everyone is basically allowed to have the day off unpaid, unless you're in a key role like an emergency room doctor or something. But obviously, unpaid day off is not great for some people. So if you look at other days, though, Monday is just terrible because it's not a day off, and it's what's the point? And if you go back to the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, Saturday would be the best alternative day to do it. But then again, you run into the issue of people who are on vacation. It's a Saturday; people may not have other things to do. In general, as we talk to other towns that have tried moving it, unless it's really established as oh, this is the day our town always does it, and that's their tradition. it doesn't really help much. Any questions on date and time? Okay, so the big one, if you go to the next slide. So for the I'm going to talk briefly about what the 5 options are in the scoring, and then we'll go to each one. So the 5 options were floor meeting. Did you have a?
Okay.
Feel free to speak
Okay,
up.
okay.
Feel free to
So
speak
we
up.
also
Oh.
talked about having an informational meeting during the day,
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
Because
just
it
evening.
just, seniors were very vocal about not wanting to come on.
Yes. It's in there somewhere. Yes, yes, like either the first meeting or the meeting before, that would be better, and maybe even like a pancake breakfast. So for the format, and I think this is kind of what most people expected from us, and so this is what we looked at. So 1, floor meeting, no Australian ballot, except that you can still do Australian ballot for special things, but floor meeting only. Second one, floor meeting with a hybrid, or hybrid with floor meeting and officers are elected by Australian ballot. Third one, floor meeting, but budgets are done by Australian ballot. That's what we do now by charter in Danville. Fourth one, only Australian ballot. No floor meeting, except I think you still have an information meeting that almost no one attends because what's the point? And the fifth thing we looked at was that New Hampshire SBT model, where you have a meeting in January, a floor meeting in January that resolves a few things and then sets the agenda for the Australian balloting on town meeting, which would require a major charter. It's legal, but it would require a major charter change for us to set things down. Each one, you'll see in the top right corner, each slide had a score. What we did was all 7 of the members had up to 10 points to give each option up to 4 points. So you could, for example, say this one gets 4 points for being number 1, this one gets 3 points for being number 2, this one gets 2 points for being number 3, etc. Or you could say I give each of these 4 points and another one 2 points, or I give this one 4 points, and these are good set. And everyone did something different. But you'll see the score here, and it was close. Any questions on the formats we're talking about? Okay, so getting into the formats. Floor only. So this one got a score of 18, which is one of our recommended options. And this one, you conduct everything on the floor. The people who can attend can talk about everything, and they can resolve everything. So you should leave with a school budget, one way or another. There's, I suppose it could be tabled, but people are going to talk about it, and you will get a budget one way or another with floor meeting. Of course, the only people who can vote on it are the people who attend, and as we said already, that's kind of a low number. This would also require a charter change, of course, and you would only expect to get about 14% participation per vote. Next one, hybrid elections, where the elections are by Australian ballot. In this case, you still have a floor meeting. Your officers, you folks, are elected by ballot, so you would have to petition. You'd have to petition beforehand and be on the ballot ahead of time. Everyone who wants to vote would be able to vote for your Australian ballot, and you would talk about the budget and any other issues on the floor. Again, you would leave with a floor vote, you would leave with a budget, and there would be all that conversation. People would be able to look at who's running for the board ahead of time, and then come in and vote for the board member they want, and then they can turn for them. In this case, probably get about 12% floor meeting, 23% of people voting for the office. That's kind of expected. Third option, hybrid by budget. This is what we currently do. So again, have a floor meeting. You vote on the budgets, Australian ballot. In this case, you all have to stand up and introduce yourselves at the meeting. By the way, I think we talked about this before, but it is okay for you to do not electioneering with t-shirts and buttons and stuff like that. But you are perfectly. It is okay for you to stand up at the meeting and introduce yourself. I'd say a little bit. It's whatever the will of the voters is for letting you introduce yourself. So in this case, Danville, I don't believe has ever. There's only been one case lately where Danville's had a budget that was rejected, and that was because the school asked for it to be. But in this case, when you do balloting, budgets may be rejected, and then you have to go back through the whole process. So there's that. And you run the risk of, I don't know how often this happens for you folks, but you run the risk of, showing up and not knowing who's gonna run for office, which may be good, maybe bad, but weird.
It happens every year.
And again, the numbers for participation for this, you expect to be very similar. About 12% of the registered voters would show up before meeting, and about 23% for the next meeting. In this case, by the way, I'll talk about this a little bit at the very end, but we still recommend doing a charter change, even though this is the way we do it here. There's no reason that we need to have a charter to do it this way. So we would still recommend doing a charter change, even if you want to continue with this method. Fourth option is ballot only. Now here you'll note the score, the last three were the recommended options, and the scores were all very similar. I mean, they weren't similar, but they were all very similar. In this case, absolutely nobody gave this one any points. But in this category, everything, ballots or budgets, officers, and any other issues are all done by Australian ballot. And you can have an information meeting, but there's not much point because it can't be signed.
And this question was asked in 2023 of the town. We were resounding.
Yeah.
So that's why it's got through.
And as we did research on it, it just seemed like the towns that have gone to that have seen this group's mission was to figure out how to enhance participatory democracy, and this doesn't do it. So enough said on that. And then the last one, using New Hampshire SB2, intellectually, this seems like this is a really interesting one. Because again, it seems like it would address both itches of, people who want to attend the meeting can attend the meeting and they can set the agenda and then you have the vote. But they end up spaced far apart because of course you have to have time to print the ballots and everything like that and advertise whatever gets decided. And I think it works well in some New Hampshire towns, but in others it does not. And you end up kind of breaking both parts apart. And we're afraid that if you did this, it would actually hurt both. Because, some people would be like, I went to the meeting, why do I have to vote? And others would be like, I didn't set this up, who set these things? So you get kind of both of them.
Well, isn't this, a little bit the way that we do things now? All the budget meetings are open to anybody who wants to come in and speak up, right? Lord knows I was here for most of these budget meetings for other reasons and stuff, and yeah, it wasn't a full house. It's a fuller house today than most of the budget meetings. So I'm wondering if it's sort of in a similar vein.
But the difference is with this, you could actually amend the budget to change things. You have something to do that then everyone would take things to vote on. So it's really
It's like whoever attends that day can actually vote that day for what's been presented.
Okay.
You
Versus
can't
just hearing
change
it.
the intent, but it's just like how you could amend an article. Right? But I do think that separation of the two completes both.
Right. That's
You
where we
water
learned
both down.
So cool idea. And oh, by the way, it would be unique in Vermont. So, anybody anybody new that moves here, you have to be telling them, oh, by the way, this is how you live in Danville. And I came from Bradford and I tell you that sucks. We'd be another town that's, almost as good as living in Vermont. So that's Glenn's 2 cents. So interesting, got 3 points, but not one of the 3 recommended. So in summary, next slide. We suggest that you and the select board implement those general recommendations that we had, no matter what, because that will help. We are sure those things will help, and we will get enhanced participation. Continue to hold the floor meetings on Tuesday during the day. There are some other considerations like when you do the information meetings and some other things like maybe keep the school board meeting. Keep the school meeting at the same time of day instead of flip-flopping, so that the superintendent doesn't have to try and figure out where he's going to go at any time, and then people get in their rhythms for the annual town meetings. Oh, school meeting is always in the afternoon.
Right. School meetings always afternoon.
So there's some things that you can do there. Although, like it says in the note, the town and schools don't have to do the same thing. It seems like it would make sense for them to, and that's probably what people would want. Anyway, as far as format, what we're suggesting is at the next meeting in 2025, discuss those three recommended formats with town meeting. So say, here's the three things. These are the legal ways, and this is what the town meeting committee came up with. Hybrid elections, floor only, hybrid budgets. And regardless of what that discussion is, set up a vote next year, this 2025, to repeal the town and school charters because they're not necessary. We can keep working, and we will, in fact, keep working the way we have to by law, keep doing voting on budgets by Australian ballot because we're doing budgets by Australian ballot. So repealing the charter does nothing for the way we currently do business. And we don't have to, so we'd like to suggest that, we are suggesting that we get rid of the charter. And then, so you do that in 2025, and in 2026, you actually lay out, you've got the input from 2025, you guys have talked amongst yourselves, and then you lay out options for the voters to choose what they would actually want to do. Which of those three options do they want to continue? And what that looks like on the projected timeline, slide 15, is you guys can have your own deliberations as the select board will between like August and December. Although we've tried to set it up so we think it's pretty much a no-brainer, at least for this part, that you just do these things, put on a question about talking about what the town meeting wants to do, and school meeting, and then set up the charter, killing charter change, yes, whatever, repeal. And then at the beginning of the year in 2025, you do those things. So if you do a charter repeal, you have to have 2 public hearings beforehand, but you can do that as the part of the information meetings. And then you set up that discussion, have the vote on whether or not to repeal the charter, which has to be an Australian ballot item. And the bottom right there has the language, which you should check with a lawyer, but that's from statute, that's the language that it should be. Shall the voters of the Danville School District vote Australian ballot to propose the General Assembly repeal the charter?
And it's probably noteworthy to tell these people that the charter was changed in 2010, right?
Yes.
This isn't some long-standing.
No, it was the chart, there was no charter.
There was no charter prior.
This isn't the charter that the legislature gave to set up the town. This
Right.
is just the charter was to change the budgets to Australia.
And that is it. If you look at
That's all it says, that it was done in 2010. So this is not a long-standing change that this committee's asking. This is not from the beginning of time or the beginning of Vermont. We're asking to change that change.
The reason it happened was because it was done in a general election.
there were 670 people voted for it, and now one person will vote one time. They voted for it, and now we're stuck.
But we didn't have to make that change
Right.
with a charter change.
Right.
I mean, we chose to.
Yeah, it's actually very easy for towns to decide whether to switch between Australian ballot and floor meeting votes for any of those things that we've talked about. And you can do it year by year. So that's why when you repeal the charter, we continue to vote by Australian ballot until town meeting votes to stop voting on budget time. So
Getting rid of the charter just opens up possibilities.
yes, that's why we're proposing to do that. Even if everyone wants to keep voting for budgets by Australian ballot, that's fine. But if you repeal the charter now, then 10 years from now, when you get a different set of voters in, they can say, no, you know what, we'd really like to talk about this. Or maybe next year, there's something big that we really want to have the floor vote on to make sure you leave with a decision or something like that. And you can set that up that way. Whereas right now you can't. Your hands are tied because of and then assuming, so that's all through this next town meeting in 2025. And then depending on whether the repeal passes locally, then it goes to the legislature, and assuming the legislature does repeal our charters, then in 2026 or 2027, you would be able to queue up one of those other options for the town meeting to decide, which is ultimately, I think, the best. And then the last slide, discussion or guidance. So at this point, again, the town meeting committee thinks that we have accomplished our mission. We were asked to identify options for improving participatory democracy, and we believe that's what we've given you. And I will throw it open to questions and or comments or other guidance.
So this is a question from the board. Other questions? We later will start beginning this discussion, what we think, what we're going to do, and we'll probably wait for some select board action to see what happens. Two of these people here are select board members. When they take this to the select board, they will have 40% of the representation of the select board. And we'll see how the select board chooses to act. And then we'll see if we want to act in concert or if we want to back off.
So, one of the things that, again, I don't know if you guys have talked about this before. It's a big, factor in whether or not myself and my wife can both attend town meeting is childcare. And so the fact that there were the Girl Scouts out there this year and taking care of the kids, was, great. Like it would have allowed us both to attend, and essentially double our household's attendance. So, you know, is that something that you guys have also sort of looked at and made a note of like, hey, this is really important for attendance or
Yeah, so Barry didn't hear that, I didn't really talk about, but that's some of the work of that town meeting coordinator and or town meeting committee of the future is to arrange for those kinds of things. Coordinate the tables, making sure that there's mics and everything is set up properly, having bodies there to move things around as needed, and especially set up the childcare, because that is a tremendous service. That helps bring people in who would not have to have those kinds of things. And we've also, again, in the area of documentation, we set up an after-action report for this year, the things that went well and things that want to continue. And that ideally will continue, where that report will go to next year's committee coordinator, and then they'll write, new comments. And so every year that'll be there to say, hey, this worked great, but next year let's do this.
But most of what we found was that a lot of the things that we did this year that were successful were things that are supposed to be done and have traditionally been done that have fallen away due to the lack of volunteership, which you should all be familiar with in everything you do. There's a lack of people showing up to do these things, and there needed to be somebody to tell them what to do and how to help. And so setting up babysitting has been very difficult over the years because you have to advertise babysitting, set up the babysitting, and then monitor the babysitting, and then send it to people. So that's certainly one that we saw that was very successful in allowing people to participate. And we look forward to continue, or somebody who wants to be as the coordinator of town meeting. Sure.
I don't know if this came up at all too, but thinking about this budget year for schools and how voters can be divisive on the budget, that if it was to be only on the floor, my concern would be that leaving out the working population with young families, that it could flip a budget.
We definitely
we
talked about that. Oh, yeah.
All right, that was my one
And
concern.
that's a very valid concern.
Yeah.
But one of the problems with board meetings is stacking.
Yeah.
Or not being able to stack.
Yeah.
Who can attend and
Right.
who can't.
Yeah.
And it's an issue. And to me, that's one reason why having an option might be good, where you might, I'm not sure when you knew this was coming. But if we traditionally did things one way, then in 2023, you might have been able to look forward and say, hey, next year is going to be really ugly. We want to make sure as many people can vote on this as possible. So we'd like to change this to possible.
one of our other problems is that we share a finance person with the rest of the union, who would have to be here if we wanted to edit the budget on the fly, and he's not a resident of Danville.
He's in fact a school board member from another town.
Yes.
So it's like, he's a school board member in another town that he lives in, so.
But I don't think he has to be there to edit the budget.
The only thing the meeting can do anyway is change that number.
They changed the number.
They
they voted on. They can't
I
change
can't say
Right.
delete this line. I'm not.
Well, yeah, but that number has to change somewhere. Like, right? It's tough to have like we didn't come up with $8 million because we felt like it. Like
Right.
those.
Yes.
But if it was done on the floor, that's, they would have to, they could edit that amount, amend that amount, and then people could vote, and then it would be up to you guys to then figure out where that would be coming from. So right now, we don't have that ability. People just vote up or down with Australian ballot.
Right.
And obviously, people appreciated that this year because there was a lot of, tension and, there was a tough one for people. So a lot of people appreciated being able to come out. And that was discussed, Molly, and I'm glad to hear you bring that up, because always, where do you go?
Right.
You want the option to amend, and I put this in my slide because you want the option to amend if needed, and that's what the town wants, but you also want access
Everybody,
and people to be able to really come in.
Yeah.
And that, you saw the numbers,
Yeah.
you know, people did that,
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's a big one, it's a big one, yeah.
But I think, now that I think about it for a few seconds, I think what you're saying is, yeah, they can only change that number, but of course they're gonna ask the school board what they're gonna do, which you're not bound by.
Right.
But it's good to have the person there that knows it all, that says, oh, okay, if you drop this by $500,000, then that means we're probably gonna, not bus people, or, cut out the electric school. board,
What are you
something like that,
cutting?
And have a reasonable, is that for you, know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to have,
Yeah.
it's gotta come from somewhere, yeah. And so, yeah, this is going away, this is going away. I mean, in the worst case, we're gonna fire that person that's sitting right over there.
And then what we saw
Be
play
horrible.
out in that whole instance was, if it did fail, you guys as a board were able to go back in and be like, all right, what can we do? Are we dropping it by $50? Are we dropping it by several hundred thousand? Then you have the option. So either way, the change happens, it's just not a specific amount if you guys making the amend, altering the budget. So those are the two options, obviously.
I think in the climate that we've been in, having, rather than having to guess at like what number of voters are gonna approve and make a bunch of random cuts, like being able to be in a room talking to voters and explaining what you're gonna lose, what you might lose, and then coming to a compromise number rather than, being one of these districts that, voted down 3 or 4 school budgets this year. You would leave the meeting with a budget that might be less than what you wanted, but you'd have a budget when you left the meeting, and you wouldn't be having a no vote and then guessing what number would, but I think there's a lot of benefits to getting budgets on the floor, which is why that was one of the recommendations that we have. And I think the future environment that we're in, the school budget for the next 2 or 3 years, it might be a place that you want to be.
But I certainly hear your concern that the ones who are most likely to be affected by a negative outcome are probably the ones who have the greatest conflict.
Yeah.
And that's the
And that
ongoing
was
struggle.
again,
Right.
it is a holiday for everybody, but it's not a paid holiday.
I would point out, I've been in two school meetings where they've actually raised the budget.
What'd you say? Raised the.
Yeah, they
raised
wanted to put the programs back in.
Yeah.
Didn't Peachum just did that?
It's not always.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little recency bias this year for sure, so.
Right, so, yes, sir.
I would just like, so I've been the mouthpiece here, and I have my own biases, certainly. So, I'd just like to check with other members over here. At the back of the presentation, everyone has specific comments in very, font sizes. Mine's very small. But did you want to?
No, Molly brought up my biggest point.
Just that I think it's an awesome institution, and those kind of let it get just taking it for granted and diminished. And it's the one day out of the year that the town gets to be a legislature, or do some aspects of being legislating for themselves, which is pretty unique and special. And also the format of town meeting allows people to bring up divisive issues within a framework so that they can be worked on and not, go one. So there are some really quite amazing aspects of the tradition of town meeting. And in going through that process, it does help. You know how you hear someone at town meeting, you don't agree with them, but afterwards, then you see them in the grocery store and you say, there's that guy. I mean, you did have a point, and it changes a sense of community. It is really build community. And so I think we've taken that so for granted, or we forget that that's what happens. That was one thing I really kind of had a feeling about, but that I really learned doing the research. Which is why we came out with, let's keep going in and
From the
support it.
school perspective, like having a day where kids can babysit, get involved, fundraise, show their capstone projects, it's, getting kids realizing what happens on those days. Yeah, I'd love to lower the voting age here. That'd be great. Get more kids involved really early. I'm a civics teacher. And I just think, you know, reinvigorating it, which is what we did with these folks did with the ad hoc meeting, is really like, it brought a lot of people together. It's really been a good step, and I think furthering that would be great.
I think, also,
I'm just thinking of, this year was, pretty tough on some budgets with three local districts, and I'm just wondering how, if that happened, how this would, and the pros and cons of this. You know, you get 300 people saying we want to cut $6 million, you know, from that large budget. So for us, we have you have 120 people want to cut $1.5 million.
And that's where the Australian ballot would land you in a place where that would be avoided, where it would just be voted up or down.
Right.
And then you guys
And-
would come back
right.
together and get to determine where you go with that, compared to you being given a number, bam, cut
Mhm.
this, good luck. You know, those are the two key differences in how it would impact you, because those are our two options. And obviously, we know the current place of where we land with the Australian ballot. And obviously that would be a shift if people wanted to go back to the floor. And there was some, people felt differently about that.
Right.
Yeah, so, in the committee at least.
But this committee's recommendation is not to make any of those changes, just to free the boards up, free the two municipalities up to conduct business in the most appropriate way going forward, without being bound by a charter. And that's where we are.
to sort of the point of the changes here that we have, I think that one of the things that the select board did this year that I think we can learn from a little bit is to ask guiding questions that foster discussion and on the floor. It'd be good to hear a little bit from the town, what they think about the school, where they want the school to go, and also to sort of start broaching some of the larger questions we have. Might be, you know, a way to sort of prime the pump of having sort of those larger discussions that we might have in here that a lot of folks don't see or only see minutes of.
But that's just, again, one of those things that's harder to do without the administration. The select board's a working board, and the school
Right.
board is not. So it's more of an executive board. We're not actually putting the budget together ourselves. So it becomes a difficult question for both sides. So it's things we have to discuss.
Well, yeah, not specifically about the budget, but just
Yeah.
sort of other
Well, yeah,
guiding.
so the bill, right,
Questions.
specifically the bill.
Yeah.
And with that, thank you all for coming. Thank you for the presentation. And we'll be discussing it further. And I'll obviously, when we present it to the select board, I'll be sitting in that meeting. We'll find out what we're gonna do.
Thank you all.
We'll be
Thank
there.
you. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you all for that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Allison. Okay, good.
So I'll hand it over to Dave.
All right, so we're off screen share. We're moving on from the town meeting committee presentation to two sets of minutes. Next, June 4th was our regular school board meeting. At that regular school board meeting, I think we were, somebody was there.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes and a second to approve the minutes of June 4th. All in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
June 4th minutes are approved. Next after that, on June 13th, the building committee met. That's a committee of the board. Molly wrote those up. There's lots of documents. I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes as well. I have a motion from Tim to approve those minutes.
I was second.
I have a second from Eric to approve the minutes from June 13th of the building committee. All in favor of approving the minutes from the building committee, June 13th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, where this puts us is down to some administrative reports, and I'll start with Matt. Matt Foster, our new superintendent. He's on the job 2 days. Got a transition month, I think. I'll turn it over to you for a second, sir, if you want to tell us anything to start with.
Sure, I appreciate it. At transition, I took a vacation week last week and spent it here. So it was a good opportunity to be able to work with Mark that last week, and it really helped being able to pick his brain as well as just talk about operations and how to make that transition happen. He was very supportive, very gracious, and I thank him very much for his help. We thought we had the tech figured out. He helped me with that, but sorry that didn't go as well as we were hoping. But we got there. VREC, we had a meeting last, I think it was Thursday or Wednesday, can't remember. And we had representatives from Danville and Twinfield there and Craftsbury, and we were just talking in big terms about what it would look like for us, with recent funding concerns, things of that nature. What would it look for us to be able to have a successful high school program? What would it take to maintain a successful high school program? And how could we go about supporting each other and maybe able to share resources across the K-12 schools? So these were K-12 programs that have somewhat unique delivery models compared to many schools. So being able to share what works well for one school and what might not work for another, and how do we try to leverage each other's strengths. And that was just a beginning conversation. So we look to have another conversation in early to mid-August. And that's all I've got at this point.
What is VREC?
It's a Vermont Rural Education, I believe it's collaboration. And Margaret out of Peacham, she had been in charge of it for quite a few years now. John Castle's in charge of it. He's recently retired superintendent from North Country. It's a pretty nice program. They've OSSU, which I was a part of most recently for 8 years. We just became a part of it, and they provide a lot of great opportunities for kids and schools, support, research. It's just we're fortunate to have them in our area to be able to reach out as a resource.
And you'll be working with John Castle?
Yes,
right?
as a mentor.
So John, we signed a contract today with John Castle to be the mentor for Matt as he goes on. So again, this is a guy that's in Vermont Rural Education Collaborative, give him some guidance. Nothing business related, but this is a relationship that we
mentor, pick your brain.
We want to foster if we can, because it's not going to be leaning on. Yep.
Similar process to what we do for new principals as well.
And teachers.
Exactly.
It's a legal requirement. It's being done, so it's useful and valuable.
Yep. So thank you.
All right. Any questions for Matt on today? Sure you have many, and as they come up, send them up. There is no student services report, then that's okay in the summer, so we'll skip that. And I'm going to move on to the principal's report. The principal's report has a lot of news in it. And so Natalie and Sarah, I need you to tell us some of this news specifically about the wall. I'm curious about the wall and about the no applicants. So hit me with it.
Can I let Natalie start with some of her updates? I'm walking through a hotel and I'll be there in just a minute.
Yes, ma'am. So in the, Natalie, you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So you all had asked at the last meeting for some data about our graduates and where they're going and what they're doing. So the top of the report there has our 22 graduates from the class of 2024, 100% graduation rate, and their post-secondary plans. So 16 of them heading into the workforce or taking a gap year, and 5 of them heading straight into college. We've got 2 going to UVM, 1 to Castleton, 1 to SUNY Morrisville, and 1 to Norwich, and 1 heading into the armed forces. And then I went and looked at final GPAs so you could get an idea of how our graduates finished their high school careers. And so these are their overall GPAs, so they're average from the 4 years of high school. And so you can see 95% of our graduates have a 2.5 or higher, and 23% are at a 3.5 or higher. And then we had talked briefly last time about graduation requirements as well. And so I put those in here because those are, I believe, what the board approved maybe 2-ish years ago, 2 or 3. And so we have our coursework, which we count in semesters, and our high school runs on 2 semesters. So a year-long English class is 2 semesters of English. So essentially 4 years of English, 3 years of global citizenship, 3 years of math, 3 of science, a year and a half of PE, a semester of health, and then 6 semesters of visual arts, performing arts, CTE, and then 2 of electives. We are interested in revisiting our graduation requirements in the coming year. and making the number of credits or the number of semesters more commensurate with other high schools in our region, and thinking about increasing our electives in order to do that. So that is nothing that's even in the works officially yet, but just something that's in the back of my brain is worth exploring moving forward.
Is there a schedule that we're on? I don't remember approving those. Is there like a certain
From
schedule?
2 years ago, it's been approved a couple of years ago with the current extension
Before.
before you were on. And that's what she wants to
Okay.
potentially revisit that once she's worked it up. So she's got the schedule listed here in terms of coursework that's required for graduation in her report. And she says that there may be a place where she wants to revisit that.
Is there a schedule that we're on for reviewing that? Is that we have to go by, or is it just more whenever they want to change it? That's when we change it. Okay.
Whenever they change it. And so she wants to revisit it as she's taking control of the upper school.
Yeah.
And we want to welcome her to do that.
This might be a really dumb question. I apologize. What's global citizenship in the context of social
Think
studies?
social,
Like,
think social studies, yeah, but it's more broad than just social studies.
okay.
History is in that one? Is history would be included in that?
I think, yeah, history would be included as part of global citizenship, but then the strand of global citizenship is more broad than that, which allows us to offer different classes that are outside of what you might think of as a traditional history class to fulfill that global citizenship requirement.
My other question was for this. Thank you for putting these together. Do you feel like this class, and Natalie, I know you just got here and this is your first year, is this class sort of indicative of classes? Is this sort of low or high for kids going directly into the workforce, or or any of that? I just sort of looking. I mean, less than a quarter of our kids are going to college. National average is about 60-70%. So it was just surprising to see it was low. I didn't know if it's a one-off year or if this is more. And we have so few kids that any year could be tough to base a lot of stats on. So I didn't know what your feeling was there.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you for that. I don't have historical perspective to be able to say that typically, 15 or 10 kids are enrolled and accepted in schools. So I'm not sure, but I can talk to my high school counselor and see.
And
I don't.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to build on that, Natalie, too, and this is probably a bigger conversation, but, going back to the Danville Works and, looking at that data, and has the trend shifted with bringing more hands-on learning? Are we pulling in more kids that might want to go into the workforce versus going to college? And does our data point in that direction? Would be something to follow up on Eric's point, looking at that data, if that's affecting, a local kid's decision to come to Danville, if they're feeling like the track is more going to work versus going to college, would they opt to go elsewhere?
Yeah, that's super hard to measure right now. The best data I have as of today is from exit interviews done with the 3 8th grade families who are not choosing to continue to Danville High School. And so since that's such a small number, I'm not super comfortable talking about the specifics of their exit interviews in a public forum, since it wouldn't be very FERPA, I guess. But my goal is to keep advertising what Danville High School is, and being sure, especially, that we're clear about our dual enrollment offerings, because there's still some misconception in the community and in the public in general about AP classes versus dual enrollment classes. And so we offer a lot more dual enrollment than we do AP, and that's for many strategic reasons, which I think are really good. It's just getting that messaging out to folks, especially when we have 2 private academies nearby that we are essentially competing with, like it or not. So
I think the other thing to consider, I mean, like we said, our numbers are small and our graduating classes vary tremendously. This was a smaller graduating class, more similar to my first year being here. Um, I think part of what we're looking for is not just preparing kids for college, we're preparing kids to be better citizens and better members and actively being able to jump into the workforce, whatever that may be. Um, as I'm doing a lot of research for my own schooling, I think looking at the younger generations, they have a very different mindset about what is next for them. And so making sure that we as a high school are actively catering to what we want or what they want, not necessarily what we want. The millennials, which are many of us in the room, um, went to college and are the most educated generation, which is fantastic, but we also have a lot of college debt and not a lot of people that are not using their degrees because they went too soon because that was what we were supposed to do. And so I think one of the pieces of the conversation that's being had with the high schoolers is what is best for them and understanding that taking a gap year is not a bad thing and making sure that they are ready and they're knowledgeable and prepared for their next. So I think having so many go into the workforce is not necessarily saying that some of those are not going to go on to college, because many of those also took college courses and things like that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably not broken down to enough of a degree because postgraduate work that is not necessarily college, might be a trade school, not listed separately. What the gap school becomes, what the gap year kids become, so that might be a couple of years later that you might get some data that might match a little bit better. But again, previously we're not tracking data. This is tracked data. Whatever it says, this is already a good start for us, and we appreciate that to have that data tracked.
It's hard to get it, but usually the 5 to 6 year postgraduate is
Right.
really the data you want to be.
3 years down the line, where are they? 5 to 6 is good. Some better idea of where our students go, as opposed to where they are a week after, what they say they're going to do. Because if you said to these students, where are you going to go, and they say gap year, and then you say, and then college, and they just nod at you just move them over. So, I mean, what gap year is one thing, but gap year, I don't know what it means. Okay. All right, but that's not the big news. The big news is taking out a wall.
So listen, we've talked a couple times. Thank you for letting me move through a hotel room traveling. It's not great. It's not great. I've talked a couple times the last 2 board meetings about how our classrooms in elementary are not sized for some of our classes. One of the pieces that's in our board report is that the lack of applicants. So we had 2 at the time of this report, had 2 posted positions for a 3rd grade teacher and a 5th, 6th grade teacher. We've since closed the 3rd grade position. And are moving an interventionist into that role because we had nobody qualified to take it. And in order to be respectful of our own teachers, we need to give them ample notice to prepare. I also know college.
So that's a budgeted job not filled, correct?
Which the 3rd grade job is not filled. It's filled. It's filled with a math interventionist. So where that leaves
Right, so the interventionist job becomes not filled, and you have that applications open.
No,
Not
the
posted
3rd grade position is closed because we're not hiring for it right now. It will reopen in in like January or February because it's still a needed position so that we can put our math interventionist back, and then we'll shift math intervention around a little bit for next year. We've got a 1-year math intervention position posted.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Natalie, don't we also have a position in the high school that is budgeted but not filled?
We do. Yep. I have a high school position that I am not intending to fill, so we are not posting.
So looking forward to next year, we have 1 budgeted position in the high school that is budgeted and not filled, and they're not looking to fill. And then we have a couple of gaps here in the elementary school we probably need to fill. So looking forward to next year's budget, this is some of the things that you need to know. So that's why I'm mentioning
the elementary ones need to
are necessary. I know, are necessary.
Yeah, so the 5th and 6th grade position, we have a very large bubble class, and I've watched them for years now since they were in kindergarten. And they keep growing, they keep growing. And so we've got a great plan, and we can absolutely have 5th and 6th grade with our 3 teachers that we currently have as part of that team. I can't do it in their current rooms, and I don't even have the spaces to easily like move them. So there's some temporary walls that have not come down in several years. That one of them that would come down in order to give us 2 big rooms and then move one of them into another big room. And so that is what I am expecting to do. I'm hopeful that when I leave the position open for about 2 more weeks, that we'll get somebody. We've had a lot of candidates apply from the Philippines, and RSU is not set up to support international candidates, partially because a big piece of what we have to be able to say that we can do is support them with their housing. And as we all know, that's a near impossible thing for people that already live here. So I will be making the decision in a couple of weeks whether or not that position will stay open, because I have to give our facilities crew the time to tear down walls and move things around in order to be ready to start then at the end of August.
Sarah, what would the class size be for that per teacher for that cohort
For 5, 6.
for 5, 6? If you're tearing down the wall and making it bigger, you'd have how many kids per?
It depends on the grade level. So, so it'll be anywhere from 16 to 20 per group. 22.
And which,
even.
so if you're tearing down walls and eliminating spaces, which we have professionals up there that will suffer?
I don't, because remember, I have an empty position then. So that means, so what it actually would give is it would give our lower elementary school counselor a classroom for at least 1 school year, instead of, and then she could have her guidance sessions in a classroom, and kids could come, the classes could come to her instead of her kicking teachers out when she's doing lessons in their room. So that's an exciting thing for everybody. There's a lot of unknown. It was a very stressful end of the school year in elementary. So there's just a lot of unknowns, and I'm really proud of our teachers for rolling with it and their flexibility and their willingness to adapt and make it work. And not make it work in the sense that it's going to be hard, but make it work and be excited for what's going to be coming.
Okay, so if you guys want to do a walkthrough on that, after the meeting, we can do a walkthrough on that, because I think I know which wall's coming down now.
You
So
do.
I'm gonna walk them through and then get an idea, and that's where we're with that. Any questions about that? Questions about the challenge of not finding teachers and not finding housing for teachers that might want to teach? That's an ongoing problem in Danville and has been.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing problem in education, and I anticipate it getting worse. And as we're looking, you know, even as we're looking at coming into a new negotiation year with our teacher contract, a big piece of this comes from how late our teachers' contracts come out. And our teacher contracts come out so late. And so that when teachers get an extension and they're granted it for usually about 2 weeks, that puts them at the end of May. And
Is that for just our CCSU or throughout Vermont?
It's that's a negotiated right with our, in our CBA.
Yeah.
And the contracts are issued on April the 15th. They have 30 days to respond. So until May 15th, they don't have to tell you that they're not going to work here, or that they are, so you don't know if it's available.
But that's not statute in Vermont, that's in our
That's
CCSU.
collectively bargained.
Most places,
That's a negotiated.
Right.
most places, it's a hot month or a month before that's when the first contract comes out, so that they're coming to a certain point. And it makes the job market really hard.
It's difficult to move it.
yeah, we're about a month later than a lot of the rest of the NEK. And part of that is because they have a month to sign it, which is also a really long amount of time to sign it. So makes it challenging.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but it is late to send them out. I think if you want to remain competitive, I think that needs to be a real conversation in the negotiations. I think moving those deadlines up would be beneficial to everyone.
We negotiate again next year, and
It's a point to
Yeah.
consider.
It's a point to consider, and yeah, and it's hard. It's also hard because teachers don't want to give that up either because it gives them more time to see what's going to be out there.
To be flexible, right?
Yeah, so it's,
Someone says you struggled with it as well.
yeah, it's, everyone struggles with it, and there's no perfect, until the state says this is when all the deadlines are and everything can align, it's gonna be a struggle. So,
Yeah, you sound like Trump, a contract.
Well, that's
state's
got
not
you.
gonna do that.
I don't have enough to read.
More laws,
I
right?
don't
So
have
you
enough.
you guys are asking for more laws. All right, are there any questions for the principals?
On a positive hiring note, Natalie and I have already offered a position. I don't know that contracts have officially been gone out, but 2 of our open support staff positions for paras. So that's exciting.
Well, that's excellent news.
I have had information come across my desk today for one of the paras.
Perfect.
And Natalie, the math position for high school, so that's just high school and it's not needed, or how is that shifting around that
Not
we,
math.
was it a math position that isn't being
Not
filled?
intervention.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it was a math
She
position.
didn't say.
All right, I was like, how do we pull that off?
She didn't say.
All right,
So it's a
it's
position.
interventionist.
No, it's not an interventionist.
It's a
So
position,
it's a
not
classroom.
being-
It's a classroom position that we're not going to fill again due to lack of enrollment in the courses offered.
Okay.
That's
Okay, that's helpful. All right.
Any further questions for the principals?
I'm excited to see how Bookworms does.
Me too.
I'm sorry, after all your effort to go through the beta program, Sarah, that you sort of threw both away and ended with a third. So, but thank you for your effort.
But it's good to know. It's good to know. It's good to have
Yeah.
tried as opposed to just be told.
Yeah, that
Thank you both.
I forgot it. I forgot about that because we've also just like jumped into that, and that's been an there's a lot of different stresses going on in the elementary world. Bookworms was always part of one of the choices. Because they're still in their beta test for 6th through 8th grade, we had chosen to not do it as a pilot. But I do think what they have to offer and the research behind it is really strong. And so our teachers are already diving in and are ready to teach it. I mean, not ready to teach it, but their engaged materials are even coming as soon as next week. So we'll be able to start getting those into the hands of teachers. And I'm really excited for the continuity of the program, what we can offer all the way up through our middle school grades, because that's been a big hole that I've been working to fill for a long time. So
And Sarah, this is the first time in your tenure here that we've had an organized curriculum from K through 5 and 6, right?
Yeah.
This is the first time we've gotten this back. So this is a big step.
yeah, it's really big.
Anything further? If not, I'll move down to board business. We removed from the agenda approval of new hires. Moving down to the next one, we can discuss this briefly if you want. The extension of summer hiring authority to the new superintendent. We have open positions. We can meet. This is not one I have an opinion on one way or the other. If you'd like to meet, we can meet. I'm mostly home all summer, so I can be the physical presence in the building. Matt's gonna be working. He's gonna be around. We would have to have a meeting to approve a hire of either this 5th grade position or the intervention position that's open, unless you wanted to extend summer hiring authority to him, which I can explain again if you need me to, but I'm happy either way.
Happy to extend summer hiring authority.
Okay.
Superintendent.
Questions here?
Mr. Toll, your thoughts? Any of your thoughts?
The board has done it both ways, and one was if we were able to meet throughout the summer, and the challenge is if you find the right person at the right time, then do you want to wait for a few days when that right person might have another offer? It's in the higher market, but then and the person that has the authority, the sole authority for hiring, knows what they're doing, what they want, is in tune with everything.
So statutorily, the only thing that's different previously was we could do it all over Zoom. We have to announce a meeting one day in advance with the action on it, post that meeting in the posting places, which Katie does, and then we can have the meeting. And it used to be that everybody could Zoom. The only difference is that with the most recent statute that changed, someone has to be in the building.
Your presence, right?
And what I'm telling you is, if you want to keep it the way it is, I can be the person in the building. So it's fine either way.
My
And
only
it's just,
concern, if
yes,
I
ma'am?
could give you my opinion, is that the hiring market, we are not the only school that is still looking for teachers. We're not even the only school in our SU that's still looking for teachers in the same exact grade level.
Well, what I would tell you,
think
Sarah, is that if somebody can't wait a day for us to put a meeting together, then I think a day is not, onerous. To get legal, a day is not an onerous act.
That would be a test of their stability.
One day.
it's
I
your
honestly,
market, though.
I'm not sure that it really matters either way, because it's not, how often do you look at a person who's been brought to a fire administration and recommended as a hire and said no?
Right.
So it's, trust the process and trust
So
them to just do it, just means that we won't find out about the hire till our next meeting.
this one's an action item, folks.
Right,
And Lee, if you'd like to act on it, you can tell me that you'd like to act on it.
I would like to act on it.
I would like to
I
act on
would,
it. What
I
would
would
you like to
like
do?
to make a motion to extend the hiring of, the authority of hiring of summer.
In
hires
the
to
summer
to
hiring authority, the superintendent communicates with me, the board chair, who acts on this, on behalf of the board to approve the hire, and then we are informed of the hire at the next meeting as part of the board. Or immediately after the hire via email to the board. And so you would deal directly with me. This is in place in some other boards, the CCSU board. I'll come discuss this with you later. So I have a motion on the floor.
Do we need to say to extend it to when?
Right, we should put a date.
So we can extend it to this, if you want to extend it to the September board meeting.
The September
Yeah.
board meeting.
Because we haven't got to the meetings, we may not meet in August. So
Right, so let's do to the September board meeting.
the September
right.
board meeting is
Let's do to the September board meeting date.
September 3rd. September 3rd.
September 3rd.
Summer hiring, superintendent summer hiring authority in place until September 3rd. Have a motion from Tim.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Molly. Any further discussion?
I know you wanted to wait until today to sort of see how you felt about that, because we had this discussion, and that's why we wanted to bring it up today. So that's why I'm getting a penny for your thoughts on it.
I say if one of us feels uncomfortable, I'm fine doing it the other way too. It's not that I feel strongly that we have to.
Yeah, likewise.
This has nothing to do with the person or the person sitting in the chair. It was, it happened to Mr. Tucker, one year, and it was, and of course, the makeup of the board was different, but, I believe it was unanimous that, the board wants to be involved or not, or in the know of exactly what was going on. That it was a tough time at that time.
That was during the COVID.
And it was a rebuilding year at the time. So,
And I mean, what we're realistically looking at here is
Too high.
2 hires. Well, so a 5th and 6th grade teacher and support staff.
We don't approve professional positions.
Right.
So
So
the superintendent has the authority to hire support staff and to hire custodians all.
the
Interventionist.
Interventionist, an interventionist is a professional, so we would have to hire a.
so it's the only position that we're really talking about, the 5th, 6th grade.
Correct. This time. We have one of them.
I do get the history and apprehension around
Mhm.
when you were there and know what it's like when it does go south.
Mhm.
So I'm fine doing it. If we do a Zoom call to hire just one person, I'm fine with that. If you don't feel comfortable, we can change it.
But I can be in person too, so it's not like,
you're making a commitment to be here, right?
Yeah.
Or one of us.
I'm home. So it's gotta be one person sitting here and it's not even with a computer. One person sitting here with the telephone works, but yeah, somebody's gonna be here.
Right, to do the Zoom as of July.
Well, I think we just have to have somebody.
You don't even have to do the Zoom. You have to just be somebody to
Now
have,
with
you
the
have
new
it on a
law, you have
laptop
to
so that you have to
For the
be,
new yield bill? Does it say
With the
you have
new-
to do Zoom?
with the new yield bill, somebody has to record the meeting. The person
Okay.
has to record the meeting,
But you
doesn't
don't
have to be in the meeting. But somebody has to be in the building. There has to be a physical presence.
All right.
A
You got
There's a
it.
flow chart.
Yeah, there's a big old budget, so I'm happy to table it, I'm happy to do this either way. For a fifth grade teacher, we have one position
Well,
open.
if you feel comfortable, just do it that way. We'll do the Zoom call, and that's fine.
So-
If you're okay doing it, we'll just do it that way.
So we're all have to vote no now. There's a motion in a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we've motioned, we've seconded.
And you just discussed, which is good.
Right.
Or you three could vote no, and then it'll pass.
It doesn't really matter, everybody.
The
So,
team and I will be the ones.
so where do we stand? All in favor of extending superintendent hiring authority through September the 2nd, please say aye. Are there any opposed?
No.
Hey,
Okay, so that motion fails. And
This is
so,
the first one, you guys.
yeah,
Like,
the first one fails.
motion
So
failed.
the motion fails. Now, here's the really, really good news now. If we meet again, we have to meet again, we have a fifth grade teacher.
Yeah.
This is good. So it's fine.
Right,
Like,
it's
it's fine either way. If I send you emails and send you a bunch of texts and say, we have to have a meeting, when are you available? It's because of a fifth grade teacher.
Can we take back the motion instead of saying it failed? That just looks kind of like.
No, that's motions fail all the time.
All right.
Motions fail all the time.
it's just, I'm allergic to words
Tell you what,
fail.
The two people who read the meeting or minutes are gonna be fine.
Alright.
I love that you're just so
It's great
competitive.
that we
like,
did it. This is the process.
You
This
don't
is
wanna,
good.
you don't wanna lose. Okay, so we got that. With the information and statistics on the senior class, I feel like we're in for the report, and I'm gonna go ahead and go past it since we're past it.
Thank
So
you
we-
again.
So we're past summer hiring authority, we're past information and statistics on senior class. We're down to the continuous improvement plan was presented to the CCSU board and accepted at the CCSU level on behalf of all the boards. CCSU board member Eric Hewitt wants to have that discussion brought down here locally to discuss with the principals. And we're gonna open up some of the stuff today, and so I think today is the discussion with the principals about what we want to talk about so that we can bring Des Hertz back in September and crack this thing back open. This is not, is that right, Eric? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So some of this is gonna be what our goal setting is, Natalie and Sarah, and what we have, when we get Des Hertz back in here, because this is a discussion with the three of you.
Can I also add before we get into the CIP? So the CIP is the look at that from the SU level. Then we have a Title I school-wide plan that takes those CIP goals and breaks them down to Danville.
And we want you to tell us that.
So we should look at that. That would be a good one.
There's some Danville specific goals in the SU-wide CIP that we want to look at as well.
They're mostly just copy and paste from the SU level.
So what we'd like to see,
They would be in the title.
they've been the title one. So what we like to see from this is some of this is meeting planning for what's coming up next in the September meeting when we have it. We'd like to discuss with Des, and I haven't gotten back to it yet, but I will, the continuous improvement plan and how it affects Danville students and how we are looking to improve graduation rates and, enact the new curriculum for learning on the K-5 and how it's going to affect,
Right. Yeah,
all that.
I think beyond the CCSU is for Danville, I think that's where we can really hone in on what our goals are for the students and the data. I think, Matt having experience with that and it will be great. And just, I think the format of that works really well. And I think, even for certain social interventions, you can use that same model. If, we have our own goals, within our school too, that if, I just think that's beneficial
But this
for
is
us to really talk about.
This is part of the
trajectory.
disconnect of the supervisory
Right.
union accepting so many things on behalf of the districts,
Right.
is that these discussions don't happen in the districts. And
Right.
it's supposed to be an operational efficiency, but it provides a level of remove from what is actually being done from an administration level down to the schools.
Right.
And this board ends up not knowing.
Well, in the community too, I think we want the community to really inform our process as well and to have a school that represents our community and what the community wants from the school. So I think kind of bridging those gaps, right? It just seems disconnected at the
So
moment. with
what I would ask
CCSU.
from Eric and from Tim and from Molly and from Dave is what kind of questions do you have? Sarah or Matt, can you give us the document that
We can get the one thing, I don't know, our terminology here, but whether we have a SU continuous improvement plan, that's important to have, so you can show alignment, but every school should have its own individual improvement
That's
plan.
what Sarah says.
And Sarah was talking about being a Title I plan, which is fine. And I think it's important for us to be able to bring that, share it with you folks, and be able to use the data that we grounded those goals in, so if we have a literacy goal, here is why we base the goal. If we have math goal, if we have writing goal, if we have behavior, we'll be able to, I'm sure between Sarah and Natalie, we'll say, hey, here's why we decided to make these choices and what we're using to be able to monitor the progress and the interventions we're putting in place to be able to make that progress. So I think that's important. So in the two principals and myself, we'll be able to have a conversation about what that's going to look like in the upcoming year. That's something that I'm wanting to do, is be able to come to you folks with data at least 3 times a year. And I know Des has talked about that. You start to build that process into our meetings, be able to say, hey, here are the benchmark results, let's say, from reading and math from our STAR assessments in the fall. Let's look at them again in the wintertime. Yep, let's look at them in springtime. So that's a muscle we're going to start developing.
This is the thing that we've asked.
Even if you think about even the money we're investing in supporting basic needs for kids, I mean, I think that gets lost in what the community really is investing in supporting our community members in the basic needs that we're providing for students too.
Over $2 million in mental health support.
Right. Yeah. Anyway.
So if we can get that document, then we can work on this, and this will be on September agenda.
Does that sound good that we could bring?
Sorry, no, I'm
No.
finished the question.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say,
So-
Molly, what
so-
do you mean by basic needs?
I guess I mean, when we're thinking about meals provided and support provided through the nurse, and even, I mean, to Matt's point, the mental health needs, kind of outside of the learning. I mean, I know some of that's documented in Des's plan too, but I guess I'm thinking of all the things that teachers do that outside of like just all the, lingo and
Social
just,
emotional.
yeah.
So I think that's important to bring up. I don't know if that would be reflected in the school improvement plan or the Title I plan, but for us to be able to go ahead and start carving out how our dollars are being used and how they're
supporting the community,
Yeah.
essentially.
correct. And I think we could do that. I'm not sure that would be a Sarah and Natalie, but that might be a larger SU1 for us to work with Michael
Yeah,
and be able to say, Michael, could you go ahead and show us within these accounts, these
that would
functions,
be great.
over total budget, our pie, could you go ahead? And that's another thing we could look at. I don't
break
know
it
how,
down.
I don't know how often we do finance reports here.
Not often enough.
Thanks. So we can have a conversation about that as well. So we can start to show that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because we can start to
Yeah.
locate, we can actually start looking at the calendar agendas for the month and say, hey, this will be a data month. This might be a finance month, and work our way
That'd be
through.
awesome. Yeah.
I also think just before we get too bogged down by what we want to put into a plan, we should see what the plan actually already includes. See, like, I think that's the
But I don't think we should walk in here with our questions. I think they should get our questions.
Right.
But
Please, because we might be able to answer them real easily
Yeah, we need
because of the
we need
plan.
the document, we need to see the document before we start. But walking in and getting the document and then peppering them with questions.
Well, yeah, and one thing that like I reached out to Des, this is the issue, so it'd be available for September, was we have things like, oh, I want a 5% decrease in this or a 5% increase in this. Well, I don't even know what our baseline is, and so can we start to have that conversation of at least, like, hey, here's where our baseline numbers are, and go from there. So those are the questions that I can put together.
Yeah,
Des,
and
but
I think having
Good.
those, Eric, would be really helpful. STAR is our major benchmark test for that. The really hard thing is that I know you're such a numbers guy, Eric, and data is huge, and I know data is a really important piece for Natalie and I too. The hard thing with student data is that it's not as, I don't know what the right word is. It's not as like concrete as other data. I mean, we all know that data can be used to show whatever, but there's so much variable with it. And all of our kids take that test, and then that impacts it too. And so I would love to have a really clear idea of what you want, because I can pull things to show you one thing, and I can pull things to show you something different. And our main school-wide goals are all focused around math and literacy and have been for the last couple of years, different elements of literacy. So I want to make sure that what we're pulling is meaningful, because it's not, it's not always as black and white as we would like it to be, and kids, and making sure that we're not looking at grade level and you have to follow the cohort and all of those pieces so that we're giving you the most accurate components.
I think what we could do though is we could, whatever we were using as our baseline data for literacy, we could share what it was that we used. And then we could talk about what we were using to monitor it. So I mean, we can definitely look at that data.
We use something different than Des and Jenny use, so that's tricky.
Is that the STAR or what?
No, I mean, we use the STAR, but we pull different reports, and that's the tricky part.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Yeah,
And
so
fine.
that's.
Because I think bigger picture
really,
at SU is one thing, but drilling down for driving instruction is a different thing, which is what you're going to be doing.
be really clear about what we're looking for.
We can do that.
I guess it's like, what is success for a kid? It may not be the STARS
Linear
test,
growth.
but maybe it's like perseverance or like, you know what I mean? Like a kid is learning to, I don't know, do hard things. You know what I mean?
Overcome a challenge.
Yeah. So there's ways to, in the nonprofit world where I come from, there's ways, the spreadsheet that Des has is very familiar, but there's different outcomes and benchmarks that you can adapt kind of almost more with the nonprofit model versus the like literacy math benchmarks and not to, this could be a whole huge project if we can get in the weeds with it, but
it's a great point.
But anyway, just food for thought that I think there's ways to show what we're doing into the community. And I love the pie chart idea, Matt. I love diagrams like that. So I think not to get in the weeds and put more on you, but a way to really show where our $8 million is going to the community and to the board and how we're meeting our mission as stated on our website and all that. I think connecting the dots a little more would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think like Matt said, bringing in some financial reports too, because that $8 million, we can touch very little of it, Natalie and I, and like the title funds aren't even, they're not even part of that. So, yeah, I think building some of that holistic piece is important and a missing component for us, for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
So we need from you a document to read through as our homework, and then we need to come with questions, but we need to give you the questions in advance. So this is some of your ongoing work, Matt, to get started with these students.
Right.
You're good there? Getting started, we'll get back with Des and tell her that that's our plan.
So Clayton, do you guys want the CCSU SIP and Danville's Title I improvement plan? You want both documents?
We have the one in today's the CIP is here. Everybody should have it. It's in the packet today. And so we have the CIP goals for the CCSU and specific for Danville in that one. So I just need the title document to start. All right, moving on from there. I have on this agenda to discuss the building project. Do you want to discuss that? One of the things I want to discuss here is, do you want to discuss it here or do you want to wait to have the committee meet again next on the 11th?
We might have a roadblock with that because in that yield bill, the excess spending threshold includes bonds now. And so now we're going to get penalized if we go over, I think it's 118% of the average tuition set at state. And that as of anybody who had a bond go through before July 1st is fine. But anybody putting a bond through after July 1st, that's going to be included in your budget, and that's going to apply to excess spending. So if we have a $20 million bond go through, we're going to be penalized with our per pupil excess spending. That's my understanding.
I just want to make my editorial comment that that's just great when they're talking about how we want to be able to put money towards improving buildings and things of that nature.
It's like a rock and hard place. Yeah. I don't know. I think it was Woodstock. There was an article in Digger about them indefinitely postponing their building plan because of this issue, and then they were going to. Yeah. So I don't know what we want to do. Do we do the maximum? Do we just do whatever improvements we can do under that threshold?
We're going to be very close to that threshold anyway.
We have, if we want to do any touch the building at all, we have to remove money from the budget. I don't know where it's going to come out. There's just, to that point, there's no there's no up without a down, in that.
Well, it's a good thing we're starting to look at our plans and, where we're spending our dollars, so I'll start to inform those decisions.
I need to read that bigger.
Yeah, look up the Woodstock.
If you could
It's
read
all in the
Woodstock.
bill, the bill summary too, just is all.
There's so many words in those.
They
There's
cross it all.
so many
I
words.
know.
in those.
Say it's written in English.
And this is in the yield.
The yield bill, the one that was, it's now Act something, but it's in the, yeah, the one that the governor.
The one that, yeah, the one
Eight,
that. okay.
887, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to meet as that committee, to tell the committee that.
Have a
And then
discussion
if
with the
we need to
committee.
shelve this plan until we do this, we need to shelve this plan officially.
Or, I don't know, Matt, if, I think when I read the Woodstock article, somebody is reaching out to the state to get definite clarification that this is the case.
Whether it is or isn't, we need to meet on 7/11.
Yeah, we should just meet that and talk, and,
Yeah, we couldn't cut $40 million from our budget.
yeah.
Right, you couldn't, I
Well-
mean,
You'd have to cut,
3 million a year.
well, yeah, from,
I see
from
what you're
1
saying.
to 3 million.
Spend, yeah,
Yeah.
over the length of the
If you
cost.
cut 3 million, you would have already cut it in half. And there's not, the money's not matching.
I mean,
So-
it may be, yeah, I don't know, if we have a dire system that is, you know, in that health and safety column, maybe that's what we just, I don't know, we're just gonna have to plan, it's just
I mean,
do that all that time.
we could go through with it, it's just going to be higher taxes, not just,
But
but
it's, so what we need to know.
What's the impact? We have to know the impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
if Mike
just how
wants those
much
numbers.
more onerous the impact is, how much more devastating the impact is. Because we already know, we have some tax information about the impact of, say, the $20 million plan or an adjustment on the $20 million plan, and it's already not, great.
Right,
And so now if you add excess spending to every year of that
yeah,
for 30 years, what that is. And
yeah.
if our hands are tied, our hands are tied, but we need to tell the
We'd
committee
know,
that.
right,
We
we'd have
can't
the
just tell us
information and let them know. and
So there's a
figure
lot
out.
of people that have a lot of work in there. It's a dwindling number, but it's a lot of people that have a lot of work in there. And they need to know if we're stopping, why we're stopping.
Right.
So we do some research on that, and everybody get ready to meet on 7 and 11.
So I've got a task here myself. I'll reach out to Mike about the impact of bond and spending over limit.
Yeah,
We gotta find out what the excess spending limit is.
yeah.
Find out what the excess spending threshold would
Call
be.
the new secretary.
We'll find out.
Yeah, all right,
the
Sorry,
limit's 118% of the average tuition, of the average spending per
yeah,
pupil.
for people.
I'm sorry, Eric, what was that?
118% of the spending per pupil number.
118%.
Yeah,
I'll see you go with any bond.
So
So
we,
like-
you never know, you don't know a priori what that excess spending threshold is.
right.
Right,
And
it's
then
moving
if you
target.
adjust it
Yeah.
for inflation and all this, so it's like, yeah, you can't really,
Moving target.
yeah.
And what would be interesting is you could be under it maybe for 2 years, but the target moves, so then you get penalized for something you agreed to maybe 3 or 4 years in the past.
Exactly.
Right, yeah, every year, and every year have that bond. and
Sort of
yet
gimmickly saying over your head. Got it.
They had to completely remove the excess spending threshold
They had
for
removed
several
it,
years.
yeah.
This is
It's coming back in, as of yesterday.
Yeah,
Came back
was
in.
put into the yield bill.
But I got a question. Have you got reserves if you have the air handling units, for example?
Can we start reserves?
Have you got
I think the
reserves?
We don't have
capital-
we don't have reserves that are very good. We have about $235,000.
I almost think reserves are included in that too, if you use your reserves.
Oh.
There's language, Matt will figure it out, but there's language in there that I think if you use your capital reserves,
It still impacts
still
whether it's,
affects.
because
unless
it's
you
still
made it-
expending,
Is this
they're still
Right,
spending
you're
it.
still
It's just
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
We made it
It's
in
ridiculous. Unintended consequences. Let's hope they didn't intend.
Yeah,
Okay.
So some research on that. and
Yes.
maybe they'll change it, right, maybe that will be a change.
Maybe you
Who
can,
knows?
maybe.
Thank you. I will read.
So 7/11, we are gonna meet.
Okay.
And we're probably gonna meet in here. And driver's ed is in the
This is the
morning.
community. That's right. Thank you.
Driver's ed's in the morning, so the other room is in bad shape. So
So 7-11 here and then 720. we also
Cleaned.
have-
7:20 to talk about. 7:20 is the next thing. I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, sorry.
That's for future next meeting dates. Okay. Next is the town meeting committee that just got here. They want us to change our charter. And so there's a big bunch of whatever it was, and I told you, just don't ask questions, because if you ask questions, it goes longer, and it's gonna be long. So what I meant by don't ask questions was let them get the meat of it. And, they are recommending.
Hi, Rob. See you, Rob.
They are recommending that we take no action, but that we change our charter. And change our charter to allow us to be more flexible. That's all they're recommending. So nothing changes. Specifically, there is no change to that we vote on Australian ballots for the budget. There is no change to that we don't make anybody announce that they're a candidate. And there's no change to that candidates can be called, but have to be nominated on the floor. And you can decide the night before that, yes, they're gonna, and then the day of that they're not, like just like we had this year. So there could be all that still happens, so there's no changes to that. But the ultimate goal of some of the people in that room was to stand up and say, you should cut $9 million out of this budget and then have everybody clap. And so, and then that motion goes through and then we're stuck.
Trying to figure out where that money's coming from.
And it could be an impossible number from somebody who has no idea what's going on. And so they're recommending that we have no changes. Whatever the select board does, we don't have to do. We can also lag a year behind. This year, there is no change yet that makes the select board always go first. So that this question comes up for the select board. So that means this question is going to come up first for the school board. If we stay in lockstep with the select board, and now we're asking that question. 2 years ago, we asked the question of should we go to all Australian ballots, and then the fury landed on us, the school board, and you guys were just elected.
Yeah.
Or were you
It
up
was a
there?
big bang of a year.
It was a big bang of a year. There's 100 people that said no. So we can lag a year behind them if they make this charter change, and then the charter change goes through. We can take no action, and then if that charter change goes through that incident, then we can do it next year. They can't tell us what to do, and then we have to do it. So that was the ramifications of this. Or whatever they said to us doesn't matter. These are just recommendations. But we probably want to stay doing the same thing as this select, and 2 of those are selected. Yes.
I think if you have, if the school board meeting is after lunch every year, you're gonna get very poor attendance.
Right, that's the trouble too. It's alternating is effective, but then alternating is you end up having to ask some difficult questions that come up for both.
Especially if the town gets done at 11 o'clock, then what? Lunch is at noon?
Yeah.
We meet back at 1?
Right.
No one's gonna stay.
Yeah, that's
not true. The people who want somebody elected like that. So we can
That's
very
right,
easily
in order to rock,
here
or they'll come
to get
back
somebody
to
on
rock the
board.
vote,
So
and
this
then they
year-
can leave
So as it
10 minutes into the meeting.
This year, there was 200, almost 300 people in the room for the select board portion of the meeting. Then there was lunch, and it was about 280 people probably left.
Is there anything that's preventing us from doing like the election of the officers before all the questions and the appropriations? So that you don't have like that lunch break between that if people are.
No, because they're 2 different meetings.
Okay.
So the school board can only ask school board questions, and the select board can only ask select board questions. So all those appropriations are the select board.
Yep.
And so they have to do all their business first, and then we have to do our business after, or vice versa.
You can't interleave questions.
You can't leave them. You can't. So I can't ask the question and table it.
It makes sense, because you'd have to have the chairman be a chairperson in charge of that meeting, and.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and your moderator has to work with you.
Maybe the town would let us go first all the time.
Maybe, but that might work too. But they just if we did it that way, that'd be fine, and then we could leave the questions off. And so in this case, we have to ask the question.
Is there a downside to changing our charter?
There is no downside to changing the charter, except then it's easier. Then you
could have
easier to
people
make changes.
petition to make changes about, right?
Well,
There are more petitions. to
You
make
didn't have
changes.
to ask them again by Australian
Right.
ballot to change
Right.
from Australian ballot. So there's no downside to changing the charter other than future flexibility. And like I said, with differing viewpoints, I went in there trying to get them to change it so that if we would vote also officers, or in some way force officers to announce, because it's so annoying
Right,
to not
yeah.
know and to have to ask questions for all January, February,
Yeah.
people asking who's gonna run, and we have no idea, nobody's saying. So, but you can't get that fixed without destroying town meeting, without destroying the actual event itself.
Right.
And that's this, what was in here was the 7 most passionate people in town about town meeting. And so there was and 6 and me. So let me rephrase that. The 6 most passionate people in the town about town meeting, and me sitting in a room with them for 40 some hours.
I think there's something to be said for day of nominations of standing up and saying, here's who I am, here's what I want, and not going through the campaign process. And,
I guess it's easier. So what?
But-
yeah.
Why not? I mean, I've seen people come in and literally in 10 minutes, just boom. Like somebody that had been in town for, I think, 3 years.
Mhm.
Boom, total surprise. And if that person campaigned against I'll call it campaign, then I remember another resident from Danville took an ad out in the Caledonia Record. You know, it's going to be one extreme to the other. And what's the best one?
Yeah. It is nice, it would be nice to know, like you said.
That was
To
my
know
main motivation, but that's not where we got with that committee.
Right.
And that committee was discussing very drastic changes, and they realized that there weren't very drastic changes. And they did a survey, and the survey went out to people, and the survey went to town meeting, and the people at town meeting said, don't change town meeting. And that's the second time the people at town meeting said, don't change town meeting. So the action of changing the charter doesn't change town meeting. And so if we want to do that, we can, and we don't know yet if the select board's going to say that, but Glenn is on the select board and Allison Lowe is on the select board, and they want to do it. So they'll probably, so that's 2/5 of the way to having that done. So I will report back to you on what happens in September, but we don't have to act on this at all. It's just, this is something to be aware of that's going to happen. And the rest of it, of making town meeting be something by preparing for it, who needs a table and who needs a babysitter. Some of that's it's just fallen by the wayside. And I will tell you, there's been one person trying to do that for several years, and now there were 7. It was a little bit easier with 7. So it's easier to know who needs a table. And then still people showed up and said, you did tell me I need to talk about it. And people called it on. So it's getting that stuff together with the coordinators, finding Alice Kitchell was our coordinator. And but that's got nothing to do with us. The select board will appoint that person. So there's no real ramifications, negative or positive, to changing the charter. And it's a thing that we're going to have to consider one way or the other, because I think the select board can ask the town to change theirs. Because the discussion will come up this year if there's no format changes first in our discussion, which is fine, because those people will stand up. But it will derail what we're doing with the budget. So we'll be, our job at town meeting is to discuss the budget as much as people are willing to listen. And that gets when we get derailed and start talking about the minutia of town meeting, you lose your message. And that's my. So that's that. Anything else on that? If not, public input.
Does anybody else join?
No, this is the wrong. We're in the wrong room, which we'll get to.
Oh, so there might be people in a different room?
I don't know. No, there's certainly not people in. That definitely didn't occur. It's fine. This is a message that's got to go back to Katie that we have the wrong
Wrong
Zoom
link.
link. We're in the wrong room right now.
Like I said, I think it's when Scott gave me permission, it changed the link, but I'll find out tomorrow. I don't think.
So we're, Natalie and Sarah, we're in the room you own, right?
No, the room that we own should be empty because we didn't let anyone other than Sarah and me in it. And we closed it.
Right.
So no one is in the room that we own.
Yeah,
the
we
original
owned the webinar.
The link that you went to off of the posted agenda was the building committee link. Just a dead room. Okay. All right.
It was a
So-
webinar that Mark gave us the rights to.
Okay.
start.
So this link at the bottom probably has to change to whatever.
It's just yeah. Okay. So
Somebody
this is
might
just
try.
this will go back to Katie and we'll get it fixed. So
this one,
It was not Katie.
No,
That worked.
She's got to fix it.
I understand.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
gonna
this
fix it
work
for
for you,
us.
Dave? You got it?
No, I tried to
No,
get in
tried.
and then I texted him and he
I
said
emailed
he'll
him
send you
this.
something else.
This is wrong. It's a change.
Okay.
You'll hear from the door being locked and us not getting the door unlocked.
Yeah, the door's not locked. Yeah, the door's didn't unlock either. So
Oh, so double,
there are
double
problems.
whammy.
The lights went on the
Go to the
door.
other door.
The library door or the front door?
The front door. That's why it's
Oh.
propped up.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, it's
I
all
didn't
good.
have a key, so I'll get there.
We're all set.
Welcome.
We're all set.
I did the cabinet meeting from the parking lot. It's all good.
No public input. Okay, future agenda items, we're gonna talk about the continuous improvement plan and the title plan and how it affects Danville School specifically in September. There is no reason to meet unless in August. And August, the meeting in August tends to be in the way of the VSA conferences anyway, which you'll probably be attending, so we're not gonna schedule a meeting for August, and our next scheduled meeting is 7/11 for the building committee, to tell the people at the building committee of what's going on with how the yield bill affects us. And secondarily, the next meeting is September the 3rd. And on September the 3rd, we'll have our regular stuff, and we'll have, school will be back in session, and we'll talk about the continuous improvement plan. Additionally, as I have mentioned, on Saturday, July the 20th, there is a retreat that's occurring, and it's probably gonna go to the central office. You were supposed to have told me if you were coming, if you were available, and if you weren't, that was fine. Right now, it's only gonna be, so far, there's only several board chairs. There's only 2 board chairs from Plainfield, the board chair from Cabot, myself, and the board chair from Peacham attending. And so,
Oh,
never mind. Are you coming?
yeah, well, I planned on it.
Eric Hewitt is another
Yeah.
attendee. Okay, so I'll send out a,
Sounds like a scorcher.
yeah, and so what probably
I
gonna
don't
happen,
wanna
this is
miss
gonna be a
this.
moderated session, and we are, each of the board chairs is legally required to have 8 hours of joined meeting work with the superintendent anyway, and so we might turn that into a board chair meeting. And if that's the case, Eric, then you can come and sit in for sure. But it might be even duller than otherwise, and so that's probably gonna be the best for all of us anyway. And I think that I can extract a lot of value out of that in that way. And I'll be back. I sent an email today
That's
to
the seat, we're talking about being the CCSU retreat, is that correct?
CCSU. It's a CCSU wide retreat.
Yeah.
And so, but it might turn into more aspects of board chair or
Yeah,
superintendent.
that's fine. I'd like to bring up the idea of doing that current state analysis.
Sure, right. That's a good place to start. And so I'll send you some of the documents that we have to go through. Great. And that'll be that. So if you're available, you can come. If you're not available, I understand. Because it's Saturday afternoon in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
So that meeting is scheduled for 7/11, yes, 7/20, yes, 9/3, yes. And the future agenda items so far are just the continuous improvement plan. The future agenda items for 7/11 are how the yield bill affects any building plans and whether or not we need to.
Michael and I'll start on that tomorrow.
Right. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. 8:02. Have a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Second. All in favor of adjourning at 8:02, please say aye.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
You gonna walk
Sarah
us out?
Natalie, thanks.
You gonna walk us out
I gotta turn off all the lights. We can leave this
by
way.
the
You
wall?
wanna show us the wall?
Oh, yeah. I'll take it there real quick.
You wanna see the wall?
It's my son's bathroom.
I know she wants to see it, so.
Well, you're just being nosy.
He's
but
the
I
big,
don't
he's the big cohort.
care. Being a nosy.
How big's that
I care.
class?
You're gonna, so let me get the keys and let's go take a walk up here and I'll come back. So I'll take care of everything that's not your computer and you don't have to do anything, okay?
Okay. Might come see your wall if